This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Today is Monday, October the 16th. This month is already half over. Where is the time going? We're glad you're joining us, though, today, as we're having a special section coming up later on as we talk with a Marion, Iowa farmer by the name of Bob Pflughaupt. We talk about his life and some of his experiences in his years of farming, as the 95-year-old Iowan is still very much involved with what happens at his family farm. We also take a look at that very sunny ag weather forecast. But what are the markets doing? Let's find out that right now. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. We're at the end of another trading day, and we're talking with Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net. Robin, starting off this week, what did we see in those grains?
Well, basically mixed trading. We saw corn under pressure basically the whole time. Soybeans able to keep its head above water. Wheat started higher overnight, and then it kind of petered out, moved a little bit lower, as we move toward the end of the day. Now, when we take a look at the export inspections, that would kind of dictate why we moved as we moved. Corn inspections were 17.1 million bushels. That was down 14.6 million bushels from last week. That's pretty substantial. Now, on top of that was, the 6 to 10 day forecast looks like better harvest weather. So we'll probably be picking up again a little bit on harvesting. So that was putting more of the pressure back on the corn market, even though it was a little friendly from the WASDE report last week. It's harvest takes place and it's bringing the crop in. So soybeans, though, we were at 73.9 million bushels on export inspections. That was up 22.3 million bushels from last week. That was a pretty substantial increase. And the inspections are what is being inspected and sealed for being shipped out. It's not sales, it's what's actually being shipped out. So that's much needed as far as our business is concerned. Wheat, 13 million bushels, up 1.8 million bushels from last week. So kind of mediocre in between, you could say. Now, on the wheat side, Russia's grain crop was raised 400,000 metric ton to a total of 141.6 million metric ton, with their exports expected to reach 64.7 million metric ton this year. So their wheat crop continues to seem to grow a little bit, as we move forward here. But on the other side, well, let me back up. That keeps a little bit of pressure on our wheat export potential because, they'll make up for some of that. And it's kind of ironic because in the month of September, I should say from July through September, Russia destroyed 300,000 metric tons of Ukrainian grain in their port facilities. So that's reducing Ukraine's export capability by 40%. So just kind of makes you wonder if they're doing some of that. Obviously, they're doing some of that to hinder Ukraine, but maybe that's going to increase their export potential. But, I guess all is fair in love and war. And it's unfortunate that this is continuing for as long as it has now. The crop progress this afternoon, they're expecting corn harvest to be 45% complete relative to 34% last week and 45% a year ago. So it's interesting that we started out really quickly, it seemed like, as far as harvest was concerned, but we're really on pace with last year. So we haven't really seen the pace pick up a lot further than we were last year. Beans at 56% harvested, 43% last week, and 63% a year ago. So it's actually a little bit slower than last year's pace. And winter wheat plantings at 68%. That's up 11% from the previous week compared to 69% last year. So that's right on track at this point in time.
So switching over to livestock then with those cattle and hogs, what did we see come out of that complex today?
Well, the live cattle seem to start out well. They moved higher and then still held double-digit gains for much of the day. There was some optimism there, I think, that because of the stronger cash last week, with southern cattle $1 to $2 higher, northern cattle $3 higher, that we might be able to continue some of that strength again this week, especially if we see demand improving. But that ran out of steam as the day wore on, and I think some of the pressure came in on the feeder cattle that helped pull the live cattle lower. Feeder cattle, they started out a little bit better as well, but quickly turned, went lower, broke through the low of the previous day. The feeder cattle, I think, are under a little bit more pressure potentially. We are seeing the new feeder crop coming in, the calf crop coming in, and some of the auction interest is mixed now, more so than for a while. It had been very strong, a little mixed right now. And the feeders, overshot what the live cattle were for a period of time there as well. So they seem to be the weaker part of the cattle complex, and that pulled some of the live cattle down. Now, of course, obviously feeders are going to, or feedlots, I should say, are going to attempt to try to get no less than steady money this week. We don't know how many of the purchases last week were committed for deferred delivery. We find that out tomorrow. But packers want to continue to improve their margins. On the hog side, that hogs just struggled all day long. They just could not really get it going. It's possible that they could potentially retest those lows again, unfortunately. Cash, we didn't really get a good read on cash because of confidentiality. They didn't release the change from the previous day. So we'll have to wait till we get the closing today. But cutouts did see some strength, up $1.39. Lean hog index is at 82.11. We did see probably most of the reaction of trading today based on low cash and low cutouts on Friday. So it's struggling. I mean, the hog market continues to struggle. Numbers are there. We don't see consistency in cash and cutouts, and that's what's been lacking in this market for quite some time.
All right, Robin. Well, if folks want to look deeper into some of the analysis that you guys have, or maybe think about some of the marketing plans they need to make for 2024, what's the best way for them to get in touch with agmarket.net?
They can call me directly at 877-256-3253 or go to our website, agmarket.net. There's a 844 toll-free number there. They can call that number and somebody will be glad to help.
All right, Robin. Well, thanks so much for the update, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
That was Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net. And let's go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers, where they settled. That comes to us courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. December corn was down 3 1/4 at $4.90 even. March was down 3 1/2 at $5.05 even. November beans up 6 at $12.86 1/4. January up 5 3/4 at $13.05 3/4. January soy meal unchanged at $3.85.90. Soy oil $1.40 higher at $55.12. Chicago wheat down 1 3/4 at $6.04 1/2. Minneapolis up 6 3/4 at $7.28 3/4. Kansas wheat down 1/4 at $6.68 3/4. Oats down 1 3/4 at $4.01 1/2. December live cattle down 20 cents at $186.55. November feeders down $1.65 at $249.92. Lean hogs down $1.20 at $68.30. Pork cutouts down $1.02 at $78.02. Class 3 milk 3 cents lower at $17.38. And that's been a check of the Ag Market Recap. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association. And then we're going to come back and talk with Marion, Iowa farmer Bob Pflughaupt. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Obviously, farming is something that is a very big part of the livelihood here in the state of Iowa, and people have been doing it for generations. Bob Pflughaupt is no exception to that. The 95-year-old Iowan sat down with us to talk about his story about farming and kind of doing what you have to do to get going in farming and to stay doing it, and talks a little bit about how the young people have a lot to look forward to here in the industry. We're talking right now with Bob Pflughaupt. And Bob, tell us a little bit about, first of all, your story of your farm and where you're from in Iowa, and tell us a little bit about what you've accomplished.
Well, I lived right around Marion pretty near all my life. Except in 1960, I moved up to Walker to a farm. And I was there until 93, and we moved back here to a farm closer to Marion. My wife liked it a lot better.
So, I mean, from when you started farming to where you're at now, I mean, where you're at towards the end here, I mean, what kind of things have you seen that was kind of impressive for you, kind of changes you saw over your time that you're really proud of or interested in or kind of amazed by?
Well, I started out here where I lived on my dad's farm on Boyson Avenue in Marion, and I was farming with him till 1960, and the barn burned it burnt before that in about 58. Then the investors come along and offered him a good price, so he sold it then, so that's when I had to move out. And we found this farm up by Walker, which is 240 acres. And we lived there for 30 years. And we moved back down there by Marion. So it's been back and forth all the time, I guess.
Okay. So I understand outside of farming, you've also built 2 tractors. So if you tell us about those, Bob, that's kind of interesting.
Well, I had a man there taking care of the books, and I was talking about getting my plowing done, which took a lot of time. And I only had the Oliver 77 tractor, and only pulled 2 bottoms. So that fellow was there, he says, why don't you just hook 2 tractors together? You can pull 5 16s. So I kind of asked him a lot of questions, and when he was gone, he says, fix it up for you to work. He said, don't send a hired man out there. So I started on about the time he left. I started finding old material and everything. I had a piece of channel iron. It was about 12 feet long. And I fastened that between 2 drawbars on the tractor. And then I fixed up the throttle control, clutch control, so I could maneuvered with the front tractor, and I bought an old 516 plow. So I did the plowing with them two tractors for probably 4 years or 5 maybe. And it's worked out pretty good.
So the interesting thing is, you talked about putting these two tractors and hooking them together. It kind of goes to talk about, doing what you have to do to get the job done, and by any means necessary, kind of necessity being the mother of invention kind of thing.
That was before we had gravity boxes. And I built, it's like a 12-foot one, and I put a manure spreader web crossways on the wagon and sloped both ends right down to the manure spreader web. And I built 2 of them, and they worked. I was just little things like that, tinkering with everything. We had used to pick corn in just a straight box, and these boxes that I made, they was 7 foot wide, 12 foot long, and they held a lot more ear corn. And they worked pretty good. I had all the manure spreader web. I had it all geared down to where it went slow to run ear corn into an elevator. And before we had the boxes made that I made, we had the straight box, but we had a hydraulic lift under the front part of the straight box for the ear corn to slide out the back end. And it had a place on there to work the hydraulic pump back and forth this way. So my grandpa took it on a windmill, and the windmill had like a pump lift. It went up and down. I turned that sideways and hooked that up to an arm to make this hydraulic work. I put an electric motor on it so that I could turn an electric motor on and it would pump up the hydraulic without me doing it. So that was 2 things that I worked on. Just something to make it easier.
Okay. So now I understand that where you're living now, in the senior living facility you're at now, you brought a little of the farm with you outside there. I understand outside the window you had a few corn plants and your decal seed sign out there. Tell us why it was kind of important to have that little bit of farming with you where you're living now.
Well, I've still got a farm up here. I've got 2 of them. We're always looking at the corn and how it's growing and everything. And so we got some kernels of corn. So we took them and planted them right outside the window here. And then we got a sign and put it on it so everybody knew what it was. We kept it watered and fertilized. We got some pretty good ears on
I was going to ask you how the yield was.
it. Well, the yield where my farm was 177. Well, last year was 200. So,
Considering the drought, we'll take what we can get, right?
well, yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, speaking of, the hardships that we face in farming, whether it's a drought, whether it's other things, I mean, you've got a lot of experience in farming. There's younger kids coming up that are doing it. You have your own kids that are running the farm as well. I mean, what kind of advice do you give the younger generation to be able to stick with it and not get discouraged?
Well, farming is like everything else. If you don't like it, you probably won't stay with it. That's the way farming is, though. If you get started with somebody so that they guide you in the right way, why you can do a lot more than you think you can. But that's the way farming is. You fix things up so it works. That's what I always used to say. I was cutting torch in a welder where you can fix most anything. Yeah. So you just got to put things together and make everything work. Try to avoid breakdown, of course. But farming is something that you want to do. Of course, with all the new machinery nowadays, farming is a lot more attractive than it used to be.
Well, Bob, I thank you so much for telling us your story. It's really great to get your insight and hear a little bit about, the farming that you've done and the kind of work you've done. And
Okay, thank you.
that again was Iowa farmer Bob Pflughaupt. Let's go ahead and take a look at that ag weather outlook. Well, the sun is shining once again here in Des Moines. We saw quite a bit of cloud cover and a little bit of rain over the weekend, but really didn't get much more than about 1/10 of an inch in most parts of the Des Moines metro area. Now, of course, check local listings to see how you fared as well, but some areas got what they needed and who have been waiting for quite a bit. Let's take a look now, though, at what the forecast is going to hold for the next 24 hours. The National Weather Service is making it look pretty good. Well, we're seeing the sun show up into the forecast again here across the state. In fact, today we saw those mostly sunny skies return. A few mixes of clouds here and there, but more seasonable temperatures. Highs were in the upper 50s to the low 60s. Now, tonight, mostly clear. We'll see a few clouds and cooler temperatures, maybe even some frost showing up here overnight in some spotty areas. We're going to see lows in the mid to upper 30s. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies, some patchy frost again to start this morning, and we'll see highs spread out through the 60s. Taking a look at the weather map for tomorrow, mostly sunny skies across the state. Cherokee, sunny 65. Shenandoah, sunny and 68. Des Moines, sunny and 67, same as Albia. Waterloo, sunny and 64. And Clinton, partly cloudy as those clouds will break off, and we'll see a high around 60 degrees. For more detailed forecasts in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been the Ag Weather Outlook, and that brings us to the end of today's show. Again, all of our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, make sure you're clicking that bell icon and subscribing so you get notified each time we put out a new video project. You can also check out our free market podcasts. Those are available through Google, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Mark Magnuson, Riley Smith, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.